Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and I'm here to review Time Cut. And this is a new time-traveling slasher horror flick coming your way from Netflix. And this is directed by Hannah McPherson, who co-wrote this with Michael Kennedy, and tells the story of Lucy, played by Madison Bailey, who goes back in time accidentally to 2003 and decides to stop a serial killer who murdered her sister. And this is a sister she never knew because her parents wind up having Lucy after her sister Summer had been murdered. And it gets into that kind of dynamic of her connecting with Antonia Gentry's Summer, who she never knew. And getting to have that connection, meeting this guy, Griffin Gluck, who is like super into science, and helping her with his whole time travel and trying to get back home. There's definitely nostalgia for the early 2000s, which this is hitting me weird that you could go 20 years in the past and get nostalgia for the early 2000s, and you're just like, oh no. The soundtrack choices were on point, really appreciated, can attest, very early 2000s, and at that point I was like 12, so almost a teenager. This film feels really familiar and just, it's unfortunate that this comes out when you have a bunch of other like genre-bending time-traveling slasher flicks that have been popping up recently, because Time Cut on the surface could have felt like a really fresh, interesting way of going about this, but it just kind of feels like, oh, I've seen this pretty recently too. And that's unfortunate. And like generally most of the cast are just like really attractive young people, and that's about it. I do feel like Bailey, Gluck, and Gentry do give some good performances at the center, and I feel like this film struggles with how it navigates time travel, and it's just like, hey, everything you know about time travel might not be true, but then it doesn't make any sense why it works the way that it does, and doesn't even try to explain it, and it's just like, haha, don't worry about it. And just like one character's like, that's not how time travel works. Just like Harrison Ford from Force Awakens, like, that's not how the Force works. And then it's like, oh, okay. So they don't really try too hard to really make sense of how this story turns out. It has a happy enough ending where it's like, hey, I got connected enough to Lucy and Summer. I cared about their sibling relationship. I do feel like Gentry and Bailey give some fine performances. I bought in. And the film gave me a solution that didn't really make logical sense, but at least was like, hey, I could appreciate that nice ending. When you have the revelations of what happens, it's not exactly the most interesting, and it's kind of obvious after a while that it's just like, oh, this is what's going on here, and it plays out in a familiar way. But whether it's the nostalgia, the solid central characters, at least there's something to enjoy here. The slasher elements are not particularly fresh or interesting, the kills or any of that. It just, feels like a function of the story that at the core of this film, it's about two sisters finally having a relationship they never got to have. And that's the most interesting and engaging part of this time-traveling slasher flick. So that's interesting. But it's a solid watch. It's 90 minutes. It's on Netflix. But those are my thoughts on Time Cut. Let me know what you think, and let's talk some movies. But thank you as always for tuning in and supporting your Wasteland reviewer.